Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Speaker and House. Today, as the first speaker of opposition, I am honored to. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and House. As the first speaker of side opposition, I vehemently oppose the motion of this House regrets globalization. Globalization brings people of the world together. Hastened by technology and social media, it has a main idealistic goal to unite people. This is not a bad thing. As side opposition, we agree with the definition provided by side proposition. Globalization and economic globalization is most definitely a process of interaction and integration and interdependence among different people, different corporations, and different governments of different nations. But this is not a negative thing. It is a positive thing, and that is where we disagree with side proposition today. The context that we'd like to provide for this debate is that globalization has become an increasingly more and more important subject in light of events such as Brexit, Donald Trump's election, and Marine Le Pen's popularity in the upcoming French election. The overall perception towards globalization seems to be declining. The scales seem to have tilted in the way most people view this phenomenon. And the problem with it is that globalization is incredibly misunderstood. But first, I would like to start. Our burden of proof today is that globalization may have had certain negative effects, as side proposition was all too eager to tell us, but overall, it is not a regrettable phenomenon. I will be speaking on 2 points today, the first of which is multiculturalism, and the second of which is advancements in technology. But first, I have some rebuttal to perform. So, side proposition told us that globalization leads to a loss of indigenous cultures. They told us that cultures become assimilated to the West and then lose their identity. But what we're trying to say, and what we're going to say when I speak later on my point of multiculturalism, our point is that this only improves cultures. This makes them more modern, and it makes them better able to face health issues and that sort of thing when exposed to medicine and when exposed to technology that globalization gives them more access to. So yes, there are things like no more authentic cultures, but this is not because of globalization. This is because of a continuing overpopulation of the world that's been happening throughout history, and it's not like exactly the cause of it isn't exactly globalization. So to blame that completely on economic globalization is actually not quite true and not quite accurate. The other rebuttal that I would like to make is that proposition spoke a lot about the mistreatment in labor that is caused by economic globalization, but they didn't tell us how small a percentage of people that this would affect, or how small an issue this is. So we see, obviously, people have exploited people since the beginning of time, and it'll probably carry on and carry on and carry on. But the one upside to people being mistreated in labor due to globalization is that it gives us more insight into what's happening, and it gives us the opportunity to talk about it and debate it like we're doing now, and it gives us the opportunity to change it. But without further ado, I would like to move on to my main points. So my first point is multiculturalism. So side proposition tried to tell us that cultures start to assimilate to Western ideals and ideas and societies, and in doing so they lose their authenticity and their true nature, and as a result of globalization there are less and less indigenous cultures in the world today. But what we're trying to say is that globalization gives cultures a chance to get to know about other cultures. it promotes knowledge and it makes ignorance harder, because globalization gives us a chance to be aware of all the other cultures in the world. It gives us the chance to be able to learn about other cultures. It gives us a chance to learn how cultural appropriation is wrong and why it's wrong. And it gives us a chance to learn about how not to culturally appropriate certain elements of different cultures. It makes us more rounded people because we have the ability to know more and to do more about what we know. Because the problem with what side proposition was saying is that effectively they were implying that everyone should just stay in their own little bubble and no one should be exposed to like the bigger world out there and all the other cultures out there, because otherwise all those cultures will become assimilated to the West and will therefore lose their originality. But what we're trying to say is that is not true at all, because if globalization is allowed to take its course as it has done throughout history, as Proposition X helpfully provided for us, then what will happen is that cultures won't be discriminated against, because a lot of the time we discriminate against the unknown. If globalization allows us to be more and more aware of different cultures, then discrimination will probably be less likely to happen, because we won't have that hindering ignorance that often causes discrimination and cultural appropriation and many problems that Proposition claimed came only from globalization. I would now like to move on to my second point, which is advancements in technology. Obviously, a big part of globalization is that it allows technology and machines and industry to spread to various different parts of the world very quickly, and thus it means that things like the phone, a whole lot of different technological devices that are very new and that have like come into our world quite recently, affect more and more people more and more easily. So it makes, like I mentioned earlier, important medical discoveries more easily acceptable to more people of the world, and therefore improves quality of life for most people all over. So in conclusion, I, as side proposition speaker number one, believe that globalization is not a regrettable offense and not a regrettable phenomenon, although it does have some negative effects.